A while back, I chatted with Anthony Bourdain, whose brash BS style took the restaurant industry by storm with his book Kitchen Confidential, a definite must-read for anyone thinking about going into the food business. The follow-up book, A Cook's Tour on Echo, was also made into a TV series for the Food Network, and that's when we caught up with Tony. I'm getting this image from the bits and pieces in my research. First off, he's the executive chef at Leal Brasserie in New York City. Tony, you wrote in your intro that being a chef allows you to, quote, swan around in a chef's jacket, taking credit for others' toil.
I'm like a casino greeter now. I serve no useful function in the day-to-day operations of my restaurant, other than that a lot of people go there and ask, compliment the floor staff on the food and say, is Tony in the kitchen? And the floor staff usually says, oh, you just missed him. He was just here.
So now you're a culinary globetrotter doing TV shoots from exotic locations. Your PR calls you sexy and you're a bad boy. So I'm getting this image. I'm hearing the theme from Shaft, like a sex symbol chef.
I love the whole idea of the sexy chef. As any woman who's ever gone out with a chef, or any wife of a chef will tell you, I mean, is there any worse option in the romance department? I mean, first of all, I'm called a bad boy of cuisine, right? People have said that about me. I'm not that bad anymore. I'm not a boy, and I'm not cooking that much. So I'm none of those things. The idea that chefs are sexy, they sure look like it on, I guess if, when they do an article in Vogue or something like that. But let's face it, we stink like fish, like smoked salmon. We have meat under our fingernails. By the time we get home, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and we're drunk. Most of us, because we're drunk, are lousy in the sack. So, alcoholism, infidelity, 17-hour days, obsessive compulsive type A personalities, and a lingering odor of garlic and smoked salmon. Hey, that spells romance to me, babe.
The theme from Shaft is still in my head, along with some different words, like, who's the sexy cook traveling the world, eating everything in sight? Chef! You're damn right. So what did it feel like? All the buzz about your first book, you really blew the cover off lots of chefs.
Yeah, I did not write Kitchen Confidential as an expose, okay? I didn't write it for civilians. I wrote it thinking that maybe, hopefully, in my wildest dreams, a cult of New York tri-state area restaurant cooks, chefs, and restaurant lifers would read it and find it amusing. And enjoy maybe the thought of the discomfort it might cause to a few annoying foodies. I had no idea that it would, it's in 20 languages now. I get these late night panicky calls from, drunken calls from like Germany and Australia and, Korea and Serbia from burned out line cooks who were calling me, dude, you wrote my life, which is cool. But what's kind of fun is that traveling with the book, I meet chefs and cooks everywhere around the world, and we are the same everywhere. I've had the same knuckleheaded late night conversations, talking shop with a couple of cocktails or pints with cooks all over the world, and it really, that's an encouraging thing, because it reinforces the idea that if you cook for a living, you're part of a thing, like Cosa Nostra, If you're a friend of ours, you're a friend of ours.
So then you write A Cook's Tour. How did that come about?
Kitchen Confidential, which was, for me, a ridiculously unexpected success, directly enabled A Cook's Tour. The Cook's Tour is a story of a very lucky line cook who scored with Kitchen Confidential, and who gets to travel around the world doing all of the cool stuff and eating all of the cool stuff he ever dreamed about as a cook. I hadn't seen anything in the world standing in a kitchen for my whole adult life. Suddenly, hey, I'm a best-selling author boy. I'm milking it, and my way of doing that was to get a publisher and a TV network to pay for me to stagger around the world, eating and drinking and visiting all the places I'd always been curious about. The plan was no better formed than that.
Now, you start A Cook's Tour with a letter from a hotel room in Cambodia, kind of a inauspicious beginning to your tour.
I do not recommend the hotel hospitality industry of Pailin in the northwest of Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge do not make good good hosts, or I didn't have it was not the swinging food folks and fun experience I'd been looking for. I mean, I'd heard that the Khmer Rouge stronghold, that they were now in the casino and prostitution business, and that it was kind of like the Las Vegas of Cambodia. And I thought, hey, swinging hardcore Marxist mass murderers running this sort of kooky Vegas in the sticks over a landmine road past roadblocks and human skulls. I thought, hey, cool. Yeah, well, it wasn't funny. It was obscene of me to even. It was a real stupid venture on my part. I mean, it was maybe some of the most exciting times of my life, but it was not good food. It was not fun. It wasn't funny. It was grim and frightening.
So, what made you think, hey, let's go to Cambodia?
Well, I don't know. I had some expectation of some kind of. I was hoping to see some kooky mix of Western capitalism and hardcore Maoism. Certainly, rabid nationalism often goes with really good food. I mean, the Basque, they know how to cook. The Vietnamese, that is the best food per square foot of anywhere on the planet. The Japanese, certainly a fairly nationalistic bunch. Food is anything more important. So, I mean, it wasn't an entirely loony concept. I mean, I went to Vietnam. I went to Japan first. The book is not laid out in the order that I actually visited these countries. I went to Japan first, then Vietnam, and I think, as is apparent from the book and the show, I mean, I just fell headlong, madly in love with Vietnam and everything about it.
Yeah, I interviewed a chef from Vietnam who lives in the United States, Mai Pham, and she says that the street food in Vietnam is incredible. It's like on every street corner, there's a master chef, and all he or she does is just one dish and does it perfectly.
Yeah, well, wouldn't that be wonderful if this country in some ways could resemble Vietnam, where, as you say, you could walk down the street and fast food, every fast food outlet is run by an individual operator who's good at one particular thing and makes it brilliantly and better than anybody else in sight. That's what it's like. You walk down the street there and everything's good. The street food, the market food is the most exciting in the world. And that whole idea of deciding what you're good at, what you want to do, and doing it well and doing it relentlessly, this is a business plan that more American chefs should follow. Be the rib guy, be the chicken dude. Don't try to be everything to everybody. That's when you see even really talented chefs fall on their face again and again and again. And when I've fallen on my face, when I've tried to figure out what people want and cover all bases, that's when I've failed. It's why fast food is evil. It's because they try to be everything to everybody. They're shooting right below the groin at the lowest common denominator.
The thing I really love about a cook's tour is that you show people that world travel can be so much better when you get off the beaten track, especially when it comes to food.
Listen, I think one of the principal joys of travel is to take a chance, is to get away from the hotel as quickly and as far as possible, to eat without fear, to eat everything in sight, whether you know what it is or not. To go where locals go, eat whatever they're eating. Stay away from, if you see any other American tourists, run. To travel without doing that, I have no understanding of why visit another country if you want to see it from inside a tour bus and eat all your meals in the Hilton buffet. What a horrible thing. Is there anything better in this world than to eat than a fresh taco rolled up right in front of you at a market in Mexico, or a bowl of pho in Vietnam? Yakitori made fresh in Japan. I mean, street food, the best food, the most exciting food to me on the trip was very often by going to markets early in the morning, where local markets, and eating in the food stalls around the market, so the hawker stands. Singapore, another place. I didn't write about it yet, but Singapore, another food destination where you can safely stagger around, eating everything in sight with no idea what it is, and you will eat well. It's amazing to see that again and again, how often in very poor, very hot countries without a lot of refrigeration, their food is fresher and better. Why is that? Something is deeply wrong with our country if we've so devalued food that we can't eat as well as desperately poor countries.
You talked about your love of meat in a cook's tour. You even hunted and witnessed the slaughter of a pig.
Listen, I don't want to. I ran a risk of sounding like Ted Nugent in this book. I'm against. I love animals. I'm against fur. I'm against animal testing. I would never hunt for sport. I would never hunt for food, actually. I've done it. I mean, I didn't even hunt. I shot a couple of rabbits. I don't like it. It made me queasy. I felt guilty, ashamed, culpable, seeing where meat comes from. But I think that's an entirely appropriate response. Chefs should know where meat comes from. And a little shame, a little regret is an appropriate ingredient in a meat dinner. You are then less likely to waste and more likely to make the most of something died for that braised shoulder of beef on your table. At least have the decency to make it good. To me, I'm a city boy. It was a horrifying moment. Meat actually comes from an animal. Something has to die. I, of course, was horrified. I mean, it was a really tough thing to live through. But, this is a celebratory event all over the world in one form or another. And, of course, as so often the case, not one scrap was wasted. Everything was made into something wonderful. And as you see so often, countries that have a tradition of using every little nasty bit and making something good out of it tend to have strong culinary cultures. All French cuisine grew up around that principle of waste nothing. Learn the skills to make the most out of every tough, nasty little bit. That's how technique and culinary cultures grow up, and often the most beloved national dishes come from like haggis or feijoada in Brazil. These are dishes that came out of poverty and oppression and cruelty and slavery and a very grim need to make something edible out of something that was pretty horrifying.
And then there's some food that you found in Scotland that's horrifying yet comforting.
Yeah, well, I think as my friend in Scotland was proudly boasting, they're number 2 for heart disease, right behind Tonga, because they deep fry anything. I mean, they do deep fried cheeseburgers, deep fried pizza, deep fried haggis, deep fried Mars bars, of course. It's kind of like New Orleans, where deep fried batter could be an entree. I mean, you ever been to the French Quarter? I mean, the whole area smells of breaded stuff and battered stuff frying in hot grease. I mean, it's truly unbelievable. But, in moderation, I like grease, I like batter, and I like gooey molten chocolate. So the deep fried Mars bar held no terrors for me. And in fact, I also like haggis very much. All of your taste for food, what you consider to be good or bad or attractive or unattractive, this is all entirely learned behavior. There is no innate sense that something is either good or bad. So your expectations are formed entirely by mostly by how you grew up and what the expressions of the other faces of the people around you were at the breakfast and dinner table. Okay, you don't have to tell people, it's lungs and throat and hearts and stomachs, all this stuff ground up. It doesn't sound good. Well, it's kind of like a big sausage, honey.
Sure, it tastes like chicken. From the ridiculous to the sublime. Now, you enjoyed a traditional Japanese tea kaiseki when you visited Tokyo. What was that like?
It's a simplistic explanation, but it's sort of the haute cuisine of Japan. It grew up around the tea ceremony. It's a very formal method of service. Often or usually consumed, as I understand it, in a ryokan, like a country inn. So it's a very sort of a 17th century, 16th century kind of a experience. You often eat alone or with friends in a private room, not in a dining room, like in your own chambers, essentially. It's very seasonal, regional. Even the plates and choice of serviceware are designed or chosen, selected according to season. It's an extraordinarily intimidating experience for a Westerner because your table manners are required, and plus you're eating often in traditional Chinese traditional Japanese garb. I think the another good thing, a rule of thumb when traveling and eating, is be prepared to look foolish, and you risk looking foolish, every time you venture out of your hotel in Japan because. First of all, we look freakish and freakish and horrifying, just by our appearance. We are doing rude things every minute that we walk through Japan. I mean, as far as they're concerned. So imagine sitting down at the most refined, the Japanese ideal of a refined and relaxing, haute cuisine meal. You can only imagine the potential for comedy. I mean, I started tucking right into this one dish with wild abandon, and the people serving me sort of started blushing and giggling, and apparently it was like I was eating the condiment. It was like it was as if someone from Japan had come here and immediately started sucking the ketchup out of the little ketchup container next to their burger, and going, boy, that's great. Yeah, so I was looking real good there. I mean, I did my best. I had two geishas, older women servers essentially. They play music and help you, in my case, help me shuck my lobster and help me out with, without embarrassing myself too badly, as far as I know. I'm sure, in fact, that the episode, that Japanese episode, I would not be surprised at all if they did a different voiceover and are showing it in Japan as high comedy. They were shrieking with laughter as, 6'4" American, in this, I look like I'm wearing a cocktail dress or something in it, his long hairy legs sticking out from under, the little sort of Dr. Denton, slippers.
So in your book, A Cook's Tour, you went searching for a perfect meal. What did you find?
There's no such thing as perfection. As soon as you get close, it's gone. It eludes you always. And I think the whole idea of the perfect meal is an absurdity. But things are perfect only in retrospect, only through the fog of history and nostalgia. Or they're happy accidents that are confluences of events. It's never going to be just the food. Nothing can be perfect. Anything. And it shouldn't be. It's the contrast that makes it is contrast and context that make great meals. I think it comes back to what you were mentioning sex early on. There are chefs in this country. We haven't mentioned any of them so far here, who cook as if they've never had sex in their lives. It's clinical. It's sterile. It's over intellectual. Is that perfect? Gee, if it's perfect, it might be in a laboratoire, as some chefs are beginning in Europe to close their restaurants for 6 months so they can work in the lab. If there's perfection, it's there. I don't want that. Do you?
Well, if there is no perfection, what is there?
Excellence, pride, fleeting moments of happiness. This is a big, marvelous, diverse, scary, dirty, fabulous world we live in. Enjoy it. Enjoy all of it. Yeah, I think you have to be willing to risk a bad meal, and many bad meals. It's the same instinct to leave yourself open to that allows you to leave yourself open to the happy, magical accident, where just things come together and you find yourself having one of the great meals of your life. If you're not willing to give yourself over to that kind of experience, nor will you have, the great meals. It's like, would you ever go to a great restaurant for a steak, or for a salmon? You don't go to Gordon Ramsay or Thomas Keller or Jean-Georges or Ducasse or any of those guys. You don't go in there thinking, I think I'll go over for the salmon at Ducasse. No, you go to eat Alain Ducasse's food, or whoever his chef de cuisine is. You're going for the experience. You go in submissive. You sit down and say, hey, let it roll. Give me the best.
Thank you. Tony Bourdain, executive chef at Leal Brasserie in New York City. His books, Kitchen Confidential and A Cook's Tour on Echo, and most recently, the Leal Cookbook from Bloomsbury Publishers. We've got a couple of recipes on our website from that book, as well as links to his other books. Check it out, www.radiokitchen.net. That's radiokitchen.net. Next week, we'll chat with John Cleese. Yes, John Cleese of Monty Python fame, as well as more chefs and participants at the recent Cooking for Solutions event at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I'm Chef Mike, inviting you to join us again for more food, fun, and friends on the Radio Kitchen. Thanks for listening.